Hello, Example Corp.
Hey, your website's down.
Is it? I don't think so. Hold on.
The app, everything, it's down.
No, it's fine. No, it's fine. Looks all right. Everything's green. No, it looks all good on the screens.
But the site is down. Are you monitoring this?
Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again? Are we what?
Yeah.
Sorry? Yeah, I've got monitoring. I've got all the CPUs. I've got all the memory. I've got all the stuff. It's all green.
Did you reboot it 3 times? Jill says you have to reboot it 3 times.
It's fine. I don't know what you're doing. Why don't you go away, try it again, and maybe come back if it's still broken.
Okay, I'll ask Jim. I'll see if it's happening for him too.
All right. Thanks very much. Cheers. Bye. Hello, Example Corp.
Yeah, it's down for Jim too.
Okay.
And Jill.
Oh, really?
It's
okay.
down for everybody.
All right. So what's the error? Have you got an error message or anything? What's happening?
Yeah.
Any sort of errors?
Yep. It's still down.
All right. Okay. What are you doing? What are you actually doing?
I went to the menu and it's the 3rd option down.
Hold on.
And
Which one?
everything's down.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You're right. It's down. Yeah. Ha. Yeah. All right. Okay. We'll get that fixed for you. Yeah. Thanks for letting us know.
Thanks.
Cheers. Bye. Right. Thank you very much. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. The purpose of that exercise was to illustrate what happens if you don't have a monitoring plan. So, welcome to those of you who are already sat down and those of you coming in. My name is Paul Ferguson. I'm a senior consultant with AWS Professional Services, and this is my colleague,
Chris Kozlowski, technical account manager from the Americas.
Thanks for coming to Building a Monitoring Plan. So, just to kind of take you through what today's about. This is a 200-level talk, so we're going to be talking about some principles, some foundations. This isn't solely about the cloud. This is talking to you about monitoring your on-premise and non-cloud technology as well. There's a variety of buzzwords around monitoring. It's a subject that attracts them. If you find us speaking any of these, then see us at the end. We have stickers. So prizes for the bingo. So yeah, what we're going to learn today, essentially we're going to be talking about who needs to be involved in monitoring, so the humans, what you should be monitoring, things to think about, and maybe what you should not be monitoring, what makes an effective rule in monitoring, what tools you should use. Everybody likes tools, so we wouldn't necessarily encourage you to start with tools, but we will talk to you about some of those that are available. You'll all have existing tools if you're working in an enterprise, and you'll all be aware that AWS comes with a rich suite of our own and partner tools. Metrics, business outcomes, and improvements. Hopefully from the skit, you derive the fact that your customers are the lifeblood of your organization, and if they are unhappy and they have options, they will go elsewhere. What we really want to kind of pivot this around is business outcomes, focusing on your customers, making sure you're interested in outcomes that lead to better business. Okay, we'll talk about improvements and automation and so on as well. If you've been in one of these sessions already, you'll be, hang on. If you've been in one of these sessions already, you would have seen this logo, design with ops in mind. So we're all here from an operations perspective. We're all here to try and talk to you about how your services and workloads run in production. And that counts as much for monitoring as it does for anything else. You're always going to have challenges around these things, but with a bit of planning, you'll be ready for them. So customers I've worked with have taken a different approach to some of these things. They've learned later on that they should have designed in retrospect. Some of them are designed in advance. They found that things have changed. But the mantra that we're using throughout all of these tracks around operations is to design with operations in mind. So whatever your background, if you're here from architecture, if you're here from operations, bear those things in mind. Right. What on earth is this all about? So why would you monitor things in the first place? I mean, what's the point of it? What on earth would you gain from that? It's all about insights. It's not about finding out whether things are red or green. It's about deriving some value, working out whether something has changed, driving some decision making, helping the business move forward. It should be, I mean, perhaps this should have been called building an insights plan. I don't know, but essentially that's what we're here to do. I want to talk about customer experience. You saw the customer experience. Hopefully you empathize with Chris. A sad face there whether you got through to the grumpy and ill-informed technician who wasn't.
Nobody was monitoring what mattered to the customer. And that's one of the things that we want to emphasize in this plan is we want to measure our operational outcomes. We want insight into the state of our business. Is it delivering on what we expect it to, and not just on metrics and technical parameters?
Yeah, so I've got a banking customer who's tracking their customer journey basically from an app on their phone all the way through to the server and back again, and that will exemplify the kind of thing we're talking about. Jolly good. You'll also be able to monitor performance and costs. Your business will be interested in these things, as will some of you. They become more acute as you move to the cloud. So cost is a very accessible metric for you. It's very straightforward to monitor it, and it's very acutely in the faces of the people who pay the bills. Performance similarly.
Everybody likes more money.
Everybody likes paying out less money, and we're here to help you achieve that. Trends, where is your workloads going? How much are you using? What are you seeing on your...
Is it improving over time?
Yeah.
Do you need to, that helps with planning, scoping of your workload?
Yeah. Do you need to...
When to scale? How much?
Buy more things? Are you using too many things? Have you had trends of too many errors recently? So those things. Troubleshooting and remediation. Hopefully there'll be some more troubleshooting than just kind of replicating what the customer's doing. We want to help you get in front of those problems. We want to help you to be able to monitor such that you can troubleshoot and fix things in advance. And then learn and improve so that you can iterate, improve your plan as you go forwards, improve what you're monitoring on, and as your estate evolves, as you adopt more cloud services, that you have learned, improved, iterated, automated in a shiny world of joy as the benefit that you reap. Right, so what goes into a monitoring plan? What are the components of this thing? What even is this thing? Essentially, it is one of these. And human beings. So thank you for coming. We're going to talk about people of various different t-shirts. They're going to go in there. We're going to talk about your knowledge of your systems, how much you know about what you've got in your estate. That's going to go in there. Alerting. It's a kind of key part of monitoring to...
The meat and potatoes of any monitoring plan.
Succinctly put, indeed. Meat and potatoes. There it is with a bell. Tools. We spoke about tools earlier. We'll talk to you about some of the tools that we have, that we use, some of the partner tools, some of the pros and cons of what you should do around those. And actions. Okay, so that's all around improvements, automation.
What do you do in response to these alerts? And we're going to emphasize that quite a bit, that the importance of actions and why you always need to have one.
Indeed. Human beings, over to you.
Okay. So our plan starts with, is going to begin and end with people. And most of you could probably already guess that there's a number of different groups of people that need to be involved. But the first step in building our monitoring plan is we want to better define what their role is going to be and what sort of information that we want to get out of them and have them contribute to here. So let's start with operations. Clearly, those are usually your first responders, your triage. They're the ones who are going to get paged during the day, sometimes in the middle of the night, hopefully not so much. That are going to be the first ones to touch that alarm when it goes off.
Do you think there are people in the room who've ever responded to an alarm? Has everybody woken up by an alarm on a computer system of any kind ever in their lives? More of you than that, more of you than that. Okay, well, you're our people.
Okay, you are now involved in the plan. But in addition to that, you also know that in addition to being the ones to touch the alert, they're also the first ones to respond, to execute your response, be it a runbook or a playbook or a notification or so. And so when we're coming up with how we want to respond to these alerts, we don't want to develop these in a vacuum. Not only do we want to get the input of our operations staff and find out what's feasible, what's not, what's right for their skill set, what's right for their workload, how it impacts the rest of their duties. If you say you have one operations person and your runbook calls for, well, if the database is no longer responsive, rebuild the entire cluster. Well,
good luck with that.
They're now occupied with this gigantic task, and the rest of your operations is going to fall away as an insight. So during your plan, get those insight and examine what the impact of what their actions are going to be on the rest of your operations and the ability to maintain insight into the rest of your workload while you're responding to other events. Developers and engineers would be the ones clearly do know the system the best. They built the darn thing. But the key thing here that we want is they're going to be the ones who define what normal looks like. It's one thing, it's good that we know how the system is structured, how it's architected, but we also want to know what we expect out of it day to day. What should normal CPU usage look like? How should our scaling work in response to increased load? They're the ones who are going to be defining your baselines and your metrics. When those thresholds are going to be breached, because if you don't know what normal looks like, then you're not going to quite know where to set that line, and then your baselines are going to be somewhat arbitrary. Well, it exceeded 20. Well, what does 20 mean? Is that good? Is that bad? So clear their input. And then finally, management. In a lot of engineering plans, they stress the importance to have managers involved. And usually there's a line of sorts that says, well, inform them of what you're doing, make sure that, it's almost like, make sure mom and dad know where you are. But we have to recognize that in monitoring, when we're taking action, actions aren't always going to be a technical action. There's going to be business decisions that need to be made too. Maybe you need to decide when you're going to execute a DR plan, or maybe you need to scale above what your preset limits were in your load balancer. We need to decide, do we want to spend that extra money in order to capture these new customers that are flooding our website? So involve them in the monitoring plan early. Make sure that they understand that they are part of your runbooks and playbooks as well. And this way, they're not blindsided, and so they can anticipate those business decisions that need to be made in response to events. So throughout this presentation, we're going to emphasize that this is largely a pen and paper exercise. We want you to develop a written plan that's going to guide you through your journey in implementing monitoring in the cloud. So we have here, just as an example, it can be just as simple as a doc or a spreadsheet, but start with something. Start identifying who those people are that are going to be involved, what kind of information that they're going to contribute, assign your roles and responsibilities, and you're going to see over the course of this presentation as we build out this plan how all this is going to come together and give you a great roadmap so that when you do sit down in front of your console and your tools, you're going to know exactly where to go.
Seamless. Thank you. Woo. Okay, so system knowledge. We alluded to the fact we're going to talk about your systems and what you're managing. Now, some of you may be familiar with the ISO FCAPS acronym. It's a list of things to consider. Now, these are the kinds of insights we want to get. First of all, faults. Everybody will be familiar with things that go wrong. Some of you may be familiar with news stories for enterprises who've experienced some faults that unfortunately have made it to the news. It breaks my heart as an operations person to see that happen. But that is a thing you need to ensure you're aware of. Configuration is there to ensure you understand what you have in your environment. So a well-known online retailer called Amazon.com had a Prime Day last year, during which time they span up a stupendous volume of things, including 31,000 cloud formation attacks, which needed to be tracked. Somebody needed to know what was going on with them, and somebody needed to have some governance around them. A lot of our customers, particularly regulated customers, won't let you build something unless it complies with a certain configuration type. In fact, they will nuke it with a Lambda script if you build it wrong. In order to do that, you need to be monitoring your configuration. Accounting. Anybody here not bound by the constraints of finance? Everybody is. We are helping customers all the time monitor their finance. In fact, I was working with a retail customer recently. One of my colleagues helped them save $400,000 a year on their bill purely by monitoring better what their usage was. Performance. Some of you are familiar with the golden signals of performance. These will affect your customers. Latency, saturation, all of those things. And security. This isn't a security track talk, but security is a consideration. My primary response to questions around security monitoring is to say enable guard duty. So if anyone's familiar with our guard duty product, I'd recommend that.
So all there's insights are going to fall into one of these 5 categories, correct?
Yep, exactly. So those are the things we're talking about. Hopefully those will reflect your estate. Things to monitor in a stack form. At the top, you've got your applications, the things your users are using. So I got the impression that the chap earlier probably wasn't monitoring the application, no cognizance. Somewhere in a nebulous haze above there is customer experience, the customer journey, what are customers doing, how are they interacting with your applications. We'll talk a bit about some synthetic monitoring things in a bit, but your applications. Now that will apply whether you're in the cloud, whether you're on premise, wherever you are. You've probably got some databases, everybody has some databases. I'd recommend RDS. Those things reside in a kind of stack formation. You've got operating systems. You will still maintain operating systems. Probably if you're in AWS, you have some long-lived EC2 instances. They're not all just ephemeral, off they come and down they go. Chances are you're still monitoring some Windows, Linux, and possibly other exotic operating systems. Networking, here we are, always monitoring networking. A lot of the principles of this come from networking. I was with a large and well-known broadcaster yesterday who were very interested in ensuring that their direct connect link between their data centers and ours had sufficient bandwidth to contain all of the transmissions they were sending, which come into your homes. That's a consideration that brings us to this point, which is us. So that there is the shared responsibility model, in essence, albeit with this bit as well, between the green bit and the orange bit. That is us at the bottom there, AWS, providing your foundational services, regions and availability zones that you know and use and love. And you'll all be hopefully aware that you can derive the status of those from our lovely status page, or from using the personal health dashboard, which I would very much advocate that you use. That will give you insight into it. I have a customer at the moment who's just instigated that. In fact, they've got a readout from a JSON file on the status page, and actually caught one of the services while I was experiencing an error, which was unusual, but good that they're able to see it. So this is the kind of thing you might be looking at.
So this so we're going to use a sample, just really simple 2-tier architecture through the rest of this example. And what we're trying to emphasize is when you're trying to identify what it is you need to monitor, first scope out all of the elements that make up this workload. Trace your data from input to output and all the little places that it touches, because those are all the places that we need insight into. In our example, we showed that even though our technician was looking at the host system, they were looking at CPU, they didn't realize that the service wasn't up. So we don't want any blind spots in our monitoring plan. We want to look at all of our elements, find out what insights we want to make sure that we cover, and they're all going to fall into that FCAPS model. Make sure that we account for those in our plan.
Yes, absolutely, indeed. Did you know that Netflix are monitoring 7 million network events a second?
Doesn't surprise me.
Indeed.
I watch about 6 million movies alone.
Oh, that was mostly you. OK, good. So here we are. Here's another thing to put into your monitoring plan, hopefully with the magic of animation. It should just, woo, there we go. Hold on to your seats. Right, and over to you, Mr. Kozlowski. Talk us about alarms, alerts.
Crafting alerts, as I like to say, the meat and potatoes of any plan. So we take our system and we throw it into production.
Is this thing on? Do you want me to manually do the thing? Whoa.
Yeah. How many people recognize this or have felt like this? Yeah. You take your app, you throw it into production. Now your monitoring system or so is reporting, everything is on fire. The whole thing is down. It might be throwing alerts if you have canned alerts in a system or so.
We definitely tested it. It was definitely tested. I don't understand what's different.
PC load letter? What does that even mean?
Yeah, it's an ops problem now.
So I want to talk about alerts and how you can craft effective alerts. We want our alerts to serve us, to serve our business. That's the ultimate point of operations, to serve our line of business. So how do we make an effective alert? There's 3 things that go into effective alert. The first one is people, the owner. Every alert is going to have an owner, whether it be a person or a group. And this person does not necessarily need to be the one who's responding to the alert. Rather, this is the person who owns the alert in its entirety. They're the ones who likely led in crafting it, but they're ones who are responsible for maintaining it, for its life cycle, helping define, is this still effective? Is it serving us? Does it no longer serve a need and we can decommission it because it's just generating noise? What we don't want to have is a situation where an alert fires and everyone looks at it and says, well, that's not mine, or why is this going off? I don't know. Who wrote it? I don't know. So make sure in your plan every single alert has a maintainer, somebody who's going to take ownership of it and hold that and nurture it from beginning to end. The next part, obviously, is our test. We're going to test for something. There's something that we want insight into, some sort of visibility that we want to get, and we want to be notified when something breaches our expectations. We're going to talk a lot here about monitoring for operational outcomes. And so in this example here, what we've done is we're taking a look at how responsive our website is. We're going to look at site latency. We've got a real permissive one here. We're just going to say if the site doesn't respond in 2 seconds, we're going to take an action. And that leads us to the third one, actions, of course. Our alerts should always trigger an action. We should do something in response to an alert. If we see an alert and we're inclined to dismiss it or shove it to the side, that alert is no longer serving us. So it can be something automated, it can be a run book, it can be notifying somebody, but we should always be taking an action. And so in this example here, one that many of you are probably familiar with, where we're triggering a auto-scaling event in response to a custom CloudWatch event, and we're going to scale out our EC2 instances because we're no longer serving up web pages to our customers as fast as they expect. So let me get a bit more into the test phase and the kind of things that we want to look for. Most of you are familiar with metrics. Those are things like your CPU wait time, your memory usage, your I/O queue depth, all these like little technical aspects of your systems that tell you how well the system's running. Is our database getting bogged down? Do we need to add more IOPS or so? What's that data pipeline look like? The problem with these, though, is that they don't describe our line of business. They give us insight into our technical things, but they don't necessarily describe what the customer's seeing or describe the outcome that we want from this workload at all. Our workloads are meant to do something.
Seemed like the level that the example corp guy was operating at this point.
Yeah. So we're striving to achieve insight into our line of business. And our metrics give us technical insight, but they don't necessarily reflect what the customer is seeing. What we want to get to is operational outcomes. We want to measure the things that we expect our workload to perform. Things like, how long does it take me to serve up that website? How many pages can I serve up in a second to satisfy my customers? If I'm submitting a job, like a video encoding job, how long is it taking that to process? Those are the things that reflect how well our workload is performing. What we're trying to get to is business insight. Remember, operations should serve the business. We're trying to gain insight into how well our business is running, and our monitoring should reflect that. So while our metrics are helpful, and they often provide context and reasoning into our operational outcomes, it's the operational outcomes that we're seeking. And then when we take those and combine that with our expectations, our goals, that's what gives us insight. That's what allows us to know, my workload is serving our business, I'm able to serve my customers, this is helping us, this could be made better. And so that's what we ultimately want out of our alerts to serve our business.
Absolutely.
And examples of that, customer sentiment, SLAs, that tells us whether or not we're meeting our goals.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing. Look at that.
That's not meeting my SLA. So let's talk about a few more best practices. The first thing as you're building out this plan, recognize that, and we recognize that monitoring is often a big lift, especially with those like Netflix who have millions and millions of systems. Monitoring was not built in a day. So use your plan as a roadmap. Prioritize which alerts do I want to build first, which insights are the most critical to me. Make those rules, refine them, and then go on to your next batch. Make it iterative so that it's not overwhelming, and use your plan as a roadmap to guide you through this process, because it will take some time. As your system scales, we need to stay on track, make sure that monitoring is continuing to serve us. Always, always alert to prompt an action. Use descriptive alerts. Keep in mind, people are going to be reading these things. Has anybody gotten a page in the middle of the night that said something simple like system down, and you didn't know what the impact was to your customer? You didn't know what system it was. You're picking up the phone, calling someone furiously because you got a SEV1 or a critical alert or whatever, and it says something's down, and you're trying furiously to get information on what it was. Do I need to come in the middle of the night, or does it belong to somebody else? Consider when you're writing these alerts, who's going to be receiving it? What's going to be the information that is going to be the most valuable to them to make a decision in that moment? Do I need to do something? Is there somebody else who's going to execute this action? Who do I need to notify? And lastly, we want you to consider consider using notification methods other than email. Consider SNS. Consider things like dashboards. Email serves a very important role, especially it's so ubiquitous. Mm-hmm. Everybody can get it.
But its ubiquity is its downfall because it's everywhere and you're lost in the murk and you're relying on someone reading the
Exactly.
You're relying
and
on
it's
email
never,
arriving. Email is not.
And it was never meant to be an alerting tool.
Yeah.
Emails come in. The first thing that you're going to see is the last thing to be sent out. It's not going to order in terms of priority or criticality.
Yeah,
or even tell you if something's still valid.
I'll tell you about my retail customer who inherited a large monitoring estate which had been outsourced. It was running on a big CA toolset, being kind of reconfigured for cloud, and all of the alarms were being sent via email into an inbox, and you can imagine the ensuing confusion and pain. Yeah, I mean, my personal bugbear against
and they're all 12 hours old.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody likes to get any more email than is absolutely necessary. Yep, you've got a page of things. Right, here you go. Here's some alerts, which also should magically, through the joy of PowerPoint. Woo! It's exciting, wasn't it, folks? Okay, tools. Everybody's excited about tools.
Finally, the good stuff.
Sorry?
Finally, the good stuff.
Woohoo! Indeed. So yeah, tools are a thing that's close to my heart. We have many of them. Oh, we had a better meme, but we had to pull it because of copyright. But this is, the excitement that you experience when you think, we should get a new tool. Let's get a new tool. It'll do monitoring. It'll be brilliant. Yeah, I mean, hold that thought. Definitely you should always have shiny things. We should all have shiny things. But at the same time, just bear in mind that the shiny thing that you're about to buy or configure is maybe not necessarily the thing that you need. So really the point of this is to kind of let your requirements dictate your tools, so work out what you want to achieve. There's a massive array of tools for monitoring cloud and on-premise solutions, and both together. Surface your requirements first of all. What does the business need? What are your user stories? If your tools don't meet that, then you've got the wrong tool. We have a real customer who genuinely chose a tool because they liked the background color on the dashboard. Okay, folks. Well, yeah. Maybe was that at the top of the list of your requirements? Probably not. And it says here start with the tools you have. So we tend to, obviously we have a bias towards cloud tools and AWS native tools, but that doesn't mean you should discard everything you have at the moment when you move to the cloud.
Especially if you know it well.
Yeah, it's something you know well and it works and you pay for the license and you want to use it, then examine that first. It doesn't always work. You would have seen perhaps reInvent, GE Transportation spoke about their burden of legacy tools, and we've seen it at other customers who are shackled to some behemoth that runs all of their monitoring for their on-premise.
But the important thing is that they select the tool that fits their needs and fits their requirements.
Yeah, you should absolutely use what works for you. So don't feel like, oh, we've gone to the cloud, we must immediately use all of these things, we must go and get some shiny thing that we saw in a webinar. Yeah. So considering these native tools, obviously you should use the native tools. Clearly we're going to shill for those and integrate those tools. So I think possibly if anybody wants a sticker, I might say single pane of glass at this point. You might want to integrate those tools such that you can have a consolidated view so you don't have 15 different pictures of network and cloud and on-premise and storage and bits and pieces. Ergonomics matter. Your ops people aren't going to be thankful to you if they have to read 15 different things. Tools. Woo! Right, so here's an example workload. That's an app on a mobile phone. There are a pile of things that you can use here, which I have called out, the AWS and partner tools. So at the top, hopefully you're familiar with the notion of application performance monitoring. If you're not, it's a wonderful thing. These tools up here that you can see the logos of, Daunting, New Relic, and App Dynamics, are just 3 of the array of partner tools, and not to denigrate any of the other partner tools, but those are the 3 that we've picked out for this. We'll give you a good synthetic view. There are some very interesting and useful use cases online. There's a very well-known online retailer in the UK who uses New Relic, and I've seen a lovely demonstration of their end-to-end monitoring using that, and it shows the customer journey, it shows the click-through, it shows exactly where the breaks are, and helps you trace back. I think some of you would have been in the X-ray related talk earlier. It's a similar capability, but in a partner form. CloudWatch, hopefully everybody's familiar with CloudWatch. You saw this is about monitoring. You probably thought this is all about CloudWatch. CloudWatch is a wonderful thing. Comes with alarms and logs and dashboards and all of those wonderful features. That's for monitoring your resources within AWS. It's across the whole estate. You can manage your EMR. You can excuse me, monitor your lovely AI if you want to, but it's also very useful for the foundational infrastructure elements. CloudTrail, has everybody got CloudTrail turned on all their accounts? If you haven't, why not? Why not? Okay, good. Turn on CloudWatch. It's fantastic. I think I mentioned a banking customer earlier who's got CloudTrail everywhere and uses it to trace their customer journey effectively. They're looking through their CloudTrail logs to surmise that, and it works for them. So yeah, use CloudTrail. Use AWS config for your configuration. We spoke about configuration. We spoke about rules and governance around configuration. AWS config rules will help you do that. There are some tools which are not on here. For example, Cost Explorer and Trusted Advisor for money stuff. Those are also very useful. I would advocate their use. And if you're not familiar with it, we have a service called AMS, Amazon Managed Services, which, as the name suggests, is a service that is managed, but it contains the implementation of these tools and their best practice around it. So if you're interested in finding an exemplar for that, I would direct you towards our use case with SGN, Scotia Gas Networks. There's a big utility in the UK who are using AMS and have implemented these things in our best practice fashion, supported by our operations teams, by which I mean AWS. So this example workload will be using all of those native tools, which all tie together in beautiful fashion, and of course there is partner tools at the top. So you could substitute a number of partner tools or your existing on-premise tools in there, but this is to show the range of things. Okay. How are we doing for? Yeah. Oh. Go on. Wait. Marvelous. Woo. Dashboards. Everybody loves dashboards. They've got lovely wiggly lines on them, and some of them in multiple colors. Look at those lovely colors and lovely lines. This example one is a CloudWatch dashboard. You'll see that the overwhelming, well, 3/4 of the metrics are things to do with customer-facing stuff, application latency, application requests, connection times. There is CPU utilization there as well. But these things are good to watch. So if you have a dashboard showing you customer-facing things, you can take customer-facing actions. For example, our retailer was doing a publicity stunt, effectively half-price fish cakes for you for this week. As soon as the advert for said stunt went onto television, you could see the massive uptick in their incoming usage. So tying it to business events and scaling up accordingly. So hopefully all of you are familiar with our wonderful enterprise support team, as exemplified by my colleague Chris Koslowski, who will provide you with a service whereby you can get in front of large events that might produce an upward wiggly line in the form of infrastructure event management thing It's just a shill for enterprise support, which is a wonderful thing. But that will help you see useful things on your dashboards. Other dashboard products are available. What I would say is don't overload them. Stick 4 or 5 things on there. Monitor what's useful. Use CloudWatch. Thank you very much. Right, so that was your tools bit. Hopefully this is going to disappear. Woo! We made the animation work, folks. That is a triumph. Right, actions and improvements. This is you.
Okay. So let's talk about that last step. As we've tried to emphasize many times already, for every alert, for anything that we're notified on, we want to take an action. We want to do something about it. If it's not spurring us to action, then we need to reconsider if this is helping us. Also let's talk about notifications as well. Sometimes you're going to have a alert that's, you decide that, okay, we need to go and tell somebody else. Well, what happens then? Okay, we've gone and told somebody or so. Usually these end in like a business decision to be taken or so, or something's not entirely clear. Try to scope those out. See where those paths go. If we have a notification where we have to go and tell somebody else about, hey, something's going on, then we should terminate an action after that. Keep in mind that they're not always going to be technical. As we said, sometimes there's going to be business decisions that need to be made. Scope these into your runbooks and playbooks as well, and make sure that that those teams are on board. Last thing, I want to talk about continuous monitoring. We want to be aggressive in refining these alerts. One of the key issues that our customers tell us that's a challenge in monitoring is the signal to noise ratio, is getting inundated with a lot of alerts that don't always spur us to action, that maybe trigger too soon, that we are inclined to dismiss or put off, or maybe about after the 5th time we'll acknowledge it and do something about it. But we just get inundated with all this noise. What we recommend is that when you're developing your plan, do it in batches and be very aggressive. Every time you see that alert fire, ask yourself, is this serving me? Do I want to do something about this right now? Am I inclined to delay? And if so, what would I need to change in that alert to make it such that I would be spurred to action? Maybe this particular alert isn't helpful for me now, but it will be tomorrow. Do I need to trigger it then? Or is there some sort of preventative maintenance that we should incorporate into our runbook so that our action is modified so that we head off the criticality of this? The last thing I want to talk about is automation, and we really stress automation a lot in AWS because that's really key to letting your business scale. But we also want to recognize that this is not a replacement for people. What it does is it allows a person to do more.
Yep.
So I like to say, if you've ever heard the phrase, coffee allows you to do silly things more quickly, automation allows you to do silly things at scale.
And sensible things, practical things, business outcome things. How many tech staff do they have in is it Airbnb? They've got 5 tech staff, I think, which is all about scaling and automation. Yeah. So some of our startup customers have scaled up massively without scaling up their organization.
But they don't do silly things. They do great things.
Exactly, great things.
So, but what they've done is they validate their processes with people first. They go through the motions with a person, do it manually or with a script, but validate those processes first and then automate them. Make sure that they're serving you, that they're what you want, and then look to automation. Try not to jump straight to automation before you've had a chance to really identify what the impact of your action is going to be on your entire environment. That way, you fail quick and fail cheaply if something goes wrong, and you minimize the impact to your environment.
There's one exception there. At least there's one that I was reading on a blog post about how you can monitor sentiment on the internet, on Twitter and things, and feed it into machine learning, and then you can grow your intelligence by magic. Think about customer sentiment as well. There's one thing that we talked about earlier with sentiment. I think a lot of you are here from enterprises and probably you're monitoring your social media feeds. It's another thing to bear in mind that was kind of not on the screen there, but a lot of our customers look first to Twitter when they have an outage and something bad's happened because people are tweeting.
Quite. So that's going to make up the last component of your monitoring plan. We've gone through so far, we've identified who's going to be involved. We've identified all the components that make up our workload that we need insight into and the categories of insight that we care about. We've gone and then crafted alerts to address all of those categories of insight that we want. And then lastly, we have our continuous improvement plan. How are we going to continue to shape this plan? What's going to be our strategy for how we're going to examine and refine these alerts?
Woo! Sorry, animation always gets me.
So let's talk about last things just to wrap this up and bring this all together. Check your monitoring approach today. If you haven't had the opportunity to sit down and really craft out a monitoring plan that's going to guide your operations, really consider doing so. Ask yourself, is it centric to my users and customers? Does it reflect my business? Does it give me the insights that I need in order to make business decisions? And then start writing your plan. And again, do this in batches. It's not going to be built overnight. Test, iterate, move on to the next batch, and you'll get there in time. And remember, the reason operations exists is support the needs of the business.
You want to do the thing?
So, and if you have a monitoring plan in place, your experience might go a little bit more like this.
Hello, Example Cork, technical support. How can I help?
Hey, the site seems to be down.
Oh, yes, you're experiencing an issue. Yes, we were ahead of that, in fact. My
you are?
engineers have been monitoring it, and we've sent out a publication. You should be receiving an email. Oh, I'm getting an update. Oh, it's been resolved. Yes, it should be fine. Could we retry?
Wow.
Could we retry now, sir?
Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. It's up.
Tremendous.
All right.
Thank you for shopping at Example Cork. Goodbye.
Hey.
Tremendous.